South East Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
My final guest this morning is Margaret Hearty from InterTrade Ireland. Margaret, you are the Director of Programmes and Business Services within InterTrade Ireland. But remind us about what InterTrade Ireland is and the work it does, please.
Okay, so InterTrade Ireland is an all-island organisation, and InterTrade Ireland was set up in 1999 after the peace agreement, with a remit to promote cross-border economic cooperation between the two jurisdictions.
In order for an SME to avail of the assistance provided with InterTrade Ireland, what criteria must they satisfy?
Well, our supports are primarily geared to helping small businesses take advantage of cross-border economic cooperation. But for most of our programmes and most of our supports, we primarily work with manufacturing and tradable services companies. For some of our programmes, they're geared to micro enterprises, so there'd be specific criteria there for companies employing less than 10 people. But generally, if you fall into the manufacturing and tradable services sectors, that's quite broad.
So InterTrade Ireland provides a huge range of services, but I suppose they could be categorised into 5 headings: innovation, cross-border sales, tendering, raising finance and business intelligence. Now we're going to speak about all of those over the course of the next 10 or 15 minutes. But let's start with innovation. Innovation is a term that we often hear in business, but it can be difficult to define exactly what innovation is. From InterTrade Ireland's perspective, what is innovation and how can the organisation assist with the implementation of innovative practices?
Mm-hmm. Well, we take a fairly straight forward approach to innovation, and we very much align ourselves with government strategy north and south. So for companies, we know from our research, companies need to innovate and to export to grow. And in terms of innovation support, I suppose what we have, companies over the years have been able to apply for large grants to develop new products and new services. But what we think is key is giving companies the capability to do that when the grant is long gone. So we have 2 key supports that we offer to companies in innovation. One is our Fusion programme, and that helps companies develop new products and new processes. So what we do is we help the companies to employ a graduate that's a specialist in the area that they need. So be it engineering, technology, science, the type of expertise the companies typically will need to develop new products and services. We put that support into the business, and then we link the business with an academic institution who are specialists in that area. So I suppose our approach is all about leaving a capability with the business. It's fine to throw money or give the company a large grant, but if you don't leave a capability there, after that grant is finished, the company doesn't necessarily know to do the next step. So we know from our Fusion programme that in most cases, in about 85% of cases, the companies retain that expertise within the business, and the average benefit from our Fusion programme is £1 million per company. So we know that approach works, and it complements very much the other supports available from the other agencies.
And where are the opportunities for businesses based in the Republic to trade in the North from your perspective?
Okay, so we know from our research that the cross-border market is a very important first export market for many small businesses. So we know from our own research that about 70% of companies on this island take their first step in the cross-border context. And currently the cross-border market, the cross-border trade is valued about €3 billion for manufactured goods, and we reckon that's about the same again for services. So it's a substantial market. And we know that one of the largest areas of trade is in food and drink, and we've supported an awful lot of ROI-based food companies to trade into Northern Ireland. There are many opportunities. Many companies would see it as a stepping stone into the wider UK market. So for some food companies selling into multiples, if they get into Northern Ireland, it's a sort of link into the wider UK. But Northern Ireland would be also strong in terms of aerospace, agri-tech, and many companies, and we've supported about 2/3 of the companies that we have supported to date have been ROI-based companies selling into Northern Ireland. So it's a first very important first export market, so they get used to working with another currency, dealing with, I suppose, a different culture, and it's very important in helping companies build up those skills.
And would it be true to say that the vast majority of the opportunities for Republic companies doing business up north would be very much around the product-based business types as opposed to service-based business types?
Doing some research at the moment, looking at the nature of cross-border trade, how much of it is business to business, and the different sort of channels to market and supply chain basis. But I suppose one of the things that we would encourage would be more collaboration between companies north and south, and construction was badly hit at the height of the recession, and we would be encouraging companies north and south to collaborate together and look at construction projects off the island, be that in the public sector or in the private sector opportunities. So, we would see a lot of opportunities for collaboration there, and would very much encourage that.
Now, aside from the currency difference itself, are there any other fundamental differences between trading in the north and south of the border?
Not really. The biggest barriers that we find is lack of information and lack of access. So, I mean, we have a range of support. If your business falls into manufacturing or tradable services sectors, we have a range of support to help companies, whether they're taking the first step into the cross-border, into the Northern Ireland market, or want to increase what they're doing in the Northern Ireland market. But at the end of the day, it's about selling to people, and if you have the contacts, and that's what we give companies. We give them the contacts, we give them the information, and that's if you have a good quality product or service, that's really the help that you need to get there.
There's a huge onus on the north in relation to public sector jobs. Does that mean that most of the opportunities for Irish companies based in the Republic is actually public sector based?
There are. We see the public tendering market as a very important market for SMEs north and south, and it's estimated, the All Ireland market's estimated to be worth about 12 billion euro. And we help companies to, because there's a knack to getting into that market. You need to know who buys what, how they buy it, and how to put a tender together. So we help companies to do that, and we give them additional support if there's a particular live tender that they're after. But I suppose the point we would make here is, if you understand the public market north, south, the rules and regulations are the same Europe-wide. So if you can crack it either in your local market, in your home market, then potentially cross-border. I mean, the world or Europe is certainly your oyster. So the public tendering market in GB is worth 245 billion. So that's our message. Know how to tender, know the rules and regulations, and the opportunity. And it's not easy. Don't get me wrong. You need, it's like entering any new market. You need to know what the rules and regulations are. But when you learn that, and if again it's down to if you have a good product or service, there's no reason why you can't be successful in that market.
Now, if you've just tuned in, I'm speaking to Margaret Hearty of InterTrade Ireland. Margaret, earlier in the interview you mentioned that approximately €3 billion worth of goods cross the border each year. But perhaps the strength of that trade depends on the peaceful, soft border which currently exists. In that respect, does the impending Brexit vote threaten to disrupt the level of trade between businesses in the north and south?
That's a difficult one to answer. I suppose what we were set up to do 15 years ago was to help companies to trade, obviously two economic jurisdictions, or two jurisdictions, if you like, sharing a land border but working back to back. And we were set up 15 years ago to help companies to trade in a cross-border environment. And look, we don't know what the outcome of the referendum will be on the 23rd of June, but we're here, whatever the outcome is, we're here to help companies. If the circumstances change, we'll continue to help companies to work around that.
Now, whilst the value of tendering is never disputed, the process remains an enigma for many businesses. How can InterTrade Ireland assist businesses to better understand the process and to ultimately benefit from the opportunities which tendering presents?
We have a really, really effective public tendering programme. We know from our research the two sort of key barriers to entering the public tendering market is sort of knowledge and know-how. So how does the market operate? Who buys what north and south, and how do they buy it? So we have a training programme called Go to Tender. It's a 2-day workshop programme where we train companies. We take them through the process. We show them how the market operates, and we train them how to put a tender together to win business in the public tendering market. It's not easy, but if you know how, your chances of success are so much higher. And if companies know how that works, this European market where the rules and regulations are pretty much the same at their, that they can take advantage of. So we have a whole suite of public tendering supports, from companies who are new to the market right through to companies who have some experience in the market, but there's a particular tender that they want to go after, and we can give them specific one-to-one support to help them be successful. So we have a whole suite of supports there.
Now, Margaret, access to finance is still proving to be a significant challenge for the SME sector, with many businesses citing a lack of funding as a hindrance in reaching their growth potential. What supports can InterTrade Ireland provide in this regard?
Yeah, well, that's certainly the feedback that we would receive from companies, and some of that was probably well founded and grounded at the height of the sort of recession and financial crisis. But what we found from our own, we did a very comprehensive piece of research looking at access to finance north and south, and what we found was most small businesses were so over-reliant on bank finance that they didn't look at other alternative sources of finance. So we've introduced what we call a funding for growth programme, and it's basically about information given. So we've run a series of workshop where we're introducing companies to all different alternative sources of finance, from invoice discounting. Obviously bank finance is still important, but for a variety of sources of finance, to make sure that companies are informed and knowledgeable and making the right decisions, because sometimes some of the finance options that they go for are not suitable for their business and are very, very expensive. There are other less expensive opportunities. So again, it's back to, knowledge is power, and information is power, and that's what that programme is designed to do. There's also a one-to-one service where companies, if they want to talk to one of our advisors about their business, they can do that. So it's a very good programme. It's very straightforward, but it's giving companies the kind of information that they need.
Now, InterTrade Ireland recently launched the 2016 Seedcorn competition. What's the purpose of the competition, and who is eligible to enter?
So the competition was one of the areas that we were asked to look at when we were set up, was looking at the whole idea of equity finance and encouraging companies to use equity as a source of growing their business. So what we found out is, for a lot of companies, they didn't understand the investment process. So we set up the Seedcorn competition, which is it's an all-Ireland competition. It's £280,000 prize fund, and it's set up basically to mimic the investment process. So companies put together a business plan, and they pitch for, in the same way as you'd pitch to a team of investors, you pitch to the competition to win part of that prize fund. So typically we're looking for companies that are less than 5 years old, so early stage companies with an innovative idea. This year's competition, the closing date is the 27th of May, and we would encourage any companies in the region that have an innovative idea or less than 5 years old to go and take a look at our all of the criteria is outlined on the website, and it's a really fantastic opportunity, and we get fantastic feedback from companies, because it really does take them, challenges their ideas, and it's exactly the kind of process that they would go through, and it leaves them very much investor ready at the end of the process, and they may well win a cash prize, which is even better again.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.